What is your baseline? Honey,
Hola. ¿Qué te pasa?
will you please explain this topic?
You want me to explain the whole thing?
Well, take us through it. Why are we discussing what is your baseline?
Well, every topic we discuss is because we think it's important. You know, we get guidance on it. So I don't think that the Ascended Masters would bring it up because they just feel like messing with us. Right?
Okay, so how does this relate to us about baseline?
Oh, okay. Well, a baseline, when you hear the word baseline, what do you think about?
The one thing that's always steady that you compare everything else to?
And that's what it is.
Okay.
We all have a baseline, as in where we operate most of the time. At what state do we operate most of the time?
Okay.
Is really what the question is asking. And that becomes your baseline. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the majority of individuals operate on emotions. And that's why we're always talking about attachments and possessions, and why about 80%, I say 80% of illnesses normally occur because emotions are out of control.
All right.
Maybe the other 20%, some people say 10%, are actually physical illnesses. But at least 80% just come from emotions. And once the emotions are balanced, all of a sudden you notice that someone gets healed. They're fine. You've seen that with individuals here, right? We do a clearing, or all of a sudden they're completely healed. There's nothing wrong. And they wonder, well, what happened? It's just emotions that were imbalanced. So the reason why we're talking about this is hopefully individuals will be able to identify what their baseline is, and then depending on what that baseline is, if they're unhappy with it or they feel they should improve, they know what to do to improve.
Okay.
What do you think?
I am looking forward to this.
Now, working on the premise that 80% of the time we're operating based on emotions, you know, individuals are emotional creatures, then when you think about baselines, what characteristics do you think we're referring to for the most part?
I would think it would be based on an emotion that you express a lot of the time. Like, I think of one lady in particular who always says it and behaves this way: worry. Oh, I'm so worried. Oh, I'm just worried about that. Oh, that makes me worry. And that's how she behaves. And she's always very high strung and always on the edge with everything because she's always worried.
So what would you say her baseline is?
Worry.
Bingo, right? Is that an emotion?
Yes.
Yes, it is. You have other examples?
Yes. Jealousy.
And how is that? I guess how would that affect somebody? How do you know somebody's jealous?
Because they're always wanting what someone else has, or feel that they should have what someone else has, but then they don't have it, so it just keeps them down, maybe?
Not, is it necessarily that they don't have what somebody else has? Or could it be that sometimes it is based on the fact that they want what somebody else has, but it becomes a competition? And the line that comes to mind is something about the Joneses. I know I used the term before.
Right. People compete with the Joneses. Everybody wants to be like the Joneses.
What does that mean?
They want to be like that one family that has everything that you want.
Now, folks might not look at that as jealousy, right? I don't know. They might look at it as competition, but it's not competition.
Or as an example, something you live up to.
It's jealousy, because it's something that you want. See, it's one thing to say, okay, I want to follow that, but it's a different thing when you when you go and you compete with those individuals because you want to be better than them. That's jealousy. Oh, they got a brand new car. Let me go get one. Or they got this. I want to get a bigger one. My friend, when she got engaged, she had a 1-carat diamond. I have to get a 2-carat diamond now.
Right.
See, that's jealousy. People might not look at it that way, but it is.
Got it.
And if you do that with different things, then of course that's your baseline.
Okay. Frustrated.
Okay.
Anger.
Are you going to talk about that?
Oh.
If so, wait, we want to give ideas here.
Well,
you want to see
frustrated.
How it affects you as a person.
I would think that someone who's frustrated all the time, and that's their baseline, that they have a challenge coming up with solutions or completing things, because they might start something and then they get frustrated and they stop and they don't come back to it because they know that they'll just get more frustrated.
That could be one. That's probably a common one. But I've also seen, and you and I have talked about this with myself, where I'll tell you, I feel frustrated about this. And what is it? When I've told someone something, and then it comes up again, and then I explain it to them again, and it comes up again, and I feel frustrated when I have to repeat myself multiple times to the same person about, whatever the topic might be. That could also be a baseline, because there are individuals that operate that way most of the time during the day. Now remember, this is what you do the majority of the time during the day, in a 24 hours period, or 12 hours. You're sleeping hopefully the other 8 or 7, right? But that's what you're doing the majority of the time. So frustration doesn't have to be where you don't know what to do. It could be because, I guess that's impatience. Right?
Right. It sounds more impatient because someone's not understanding what you're saying, or.
But what is it? What is impatience? It's a form of frustration.
Okay.
Right? Because it's still negative. I don't see someone being impatient where it's positive.
Right.
So I'm really positively impatient. I don't think so. I know you and I have talked about that, where you have the patience for it. Right? And for example, I'll say something. I know you've told me this, where I just think that people should understand something once.
Yes, that's exactly how my husband is. He's going to tell you once, and if you don't get it that first time, you go back to him again. I already told you this. Well, yes, you did, but I didn't understand it completely, or I may not recall it, and I've admitted it in many videos where I'm like, I don't recall you telling me that. And of course, my husband will smile and shake his head because he gets that impatience that kicks in. It's like, but I told you!
See, but no, it's not impatience now, it's more like perplexed. I'm perplexed.
What's wrong with you? Why don't you remember this? And he has mentioned something similar to that to me before.
In the past, it was impatience and frustration, because I'm not dealing with this. Now it's more of a, wow, that's amazing. I just told you about that. We just had one of those the other day.
We did. We just had one this morning.
Oh, this morning. Okay, yes. It was this morning, right? So that's. But it's one thing to do it once in a day, for a short period. It's a different thing to do it for the majority of the day.
Right.
That becomes the baseline.
Okay. Anger. Well, I think anger is pretty simple. They're just angry all the time.
But the thing is, what causes the anger?
Indeed, what does cause the anger?
And that's why we're having this conversation. Is the anger because someone feels like he or she is a failure? And so whenever something comes up, it reminds them of that.
Or could it be that they don't accept responsibility and they keep trying to blame other people, so they allow themselves to be angry, thinking it's everybody else's fault instead of looking within?
That could be another one, right? It could also be where that's the way they were brought up, where they're always being blamed for things. So now the moment you ask them a question, they get defensive.
Yeah.
And so now they become angry. So, well, why did you do that? Why are you asking me that? You don't have to ask me that. I already told you. See, the anger kicks in, and then you're wondering, what have I done to you? I just wanted to answer my question.
Right.
And then you, being ignorant, not you, but anybody else, being ignorant about what this person is like, you say, well, could you just answer my question? Then you start pushing it. Just answer the question. And then the more you say that, the angrier they get.
More defensive.
So that's one baseline, another baseline there.
Okay. Scared. Yes. We met a lot of people who are scared or afraid. Oh, I'm afraid this will happen. Oh my gosh, if I go out in public right now, I'm afraid I'll get sick. Oh, and they just always have something, and they constantly live in fear. Oh, I'm afraid I might fail at that. So then they don't even try things. They may not even say it out loud. It's just subconscious all the time, thinking They're afraid. They allow fear to control them, in my
Well,
mind.
do they allow fear to control them? We're not talking about that. We're just talking about where someone operates as a baseline.
Oh, so fear might be their baseline.
So, what's causing the fear? Is the question.
Indeed.
Is it something? Normally, when people are afraid, it's because, in many cases, this is from the spiritual realm,
Uh-huh.
because they feel unloved. And they don't realize it, but that's what it is. All right? So then they're always afraid because they're afraid that whatever it is that will happen, they could lose a friendship. They could lose the attention of somebody. They could lose the approval of somebody else. So if you notice, there's always that fear of losing something. So before they're born, they already don't feel that love. It could be from something like a pregnancy purging, as we talked about in one video.
Right,
It
right.
could be where they feel unloved as a child because they weren't paid attention to. Or their siblings just picked on them. Or they just felt different compared to everybody else when they were younger. And that carried on over to adulthood and it never got taken care of.
Never got resolved.
Okay? So that's what this baseline conversation is about, is to try to identify the source of the baseline.
Got
So
it.
that individuals can go back now and say, okay, I see what it is, how do I fix it? Or how do I get it fixed? Not that they can fix it themselves, right?
Right, right. Suspicious. Someone who's always suspicious, always thinking that someone has ulterior motive for doing something, maybe.
Right.
That's
Well,
a rough
but-
way to live.
Well, but then how does that come about? Maybe from their experience when they were younger, they were blamed for things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're used to being a person. After a while, you don't trust anybody because you think they're going to blame you for something. You're the
Right.
guy, or you're the individual that always seems to be doing something wrong. So instead of being defensive now, you're still defensive, but in a different way. You don't argue out loud. Instead, you keep it to yourself. So a suspicious person is literally a defensive person, except they're an introvert, in my mind. You understand the difference?
Right, right.
The person that wants to speak out is the defensive one. They want to get it out. But the one that they don't feel like they need to talk about it, they keep it to themselves, they become suspicious. So almost everything, if you just say one thing to them, for example, if I were to say to you, you know, your hair, it looks okay. Someone with a suspicious mind, or defensive, see, the defensive person, so what do you mean it's okay? What's wrong with it?
Uh-huh.
Now, I didn't say there's anything wrong with it. Okay doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it.
Uh-huh.
Besides, it's just my perspective, right?
Right.
While the suspicious person might be like, okay, what is this person up to? They're saying, okay, is he trying to come on to me or something? Because, you know, to them it's almost like a compliment. So they're wondering, why is this person complimenting me?
Right.
You know, they're up to something. That's where suspicion comes in.
Got it. Sad. A lot of people are even, they are sad. Why? That's a good question.
But why do you think? You're acting like you're
Because-
blanking on it.
well,
You can talk. You have a lot
I
of
know,
thoughts.
I know. Why would I be sad? That's what I'm thinking about, so I could relate to the word. Maybe because a loved one has died and you're just not letting go of them. You just want
That's
to hang
one.
on to
That
them.
could be one.
Sad because you don't feel your life is going the way you want it to, and then you feel helpless, like you can't change it, so that just makes you feel sad.
Okay.
Maybe there's some kind of depression involved that makes you feel sad.
Now, we'd say then that the depression is from some chemical imbalance.
Right, in the body.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Right.
Right.
Now that's we're referring to it from that standpoint, because it could also be depression based on emotional imbalance,
Right.
right? Which
Right.
are two different things there. Now you could also be sad what? Because like you said, you don't want to let go, you haven't let go of someone that's passed, but how about not letting go of a past event or past experience?
Or a past relationship.
That could also be. So it's pretty much holding on to the past.
And that's what makes you feel
some
sad.
kind of pass, right? Whatever, but it's not a good pass is the point. It's not something that gets you perked up. It's something that keeps you down. And for whatever reason, you want to feel down. You want to feel sad, so then you hold on to it.
Okay. Happy.
Okay.
Happy, if your baseline is happy, I think that's a good thing, because that means that I would think you're an optimist and you're always looking forward to challenges and looking forward to facing things and anything that goes along with being happy.
When I met you, when I told you that you got on my nerves because you're always bouncing off the wall like you're drinking alcohol or something. So that's what happiness is, right? That no matter what it is, even if it's something bad that you might consider negative, you don't let it hold you back for too long.
Your
Yes, there might be a
perspective is
setback.
different, and you don't allow it to affect you that much.
That's
you
correct.
remain in a positive state.
And again, that doesn't mean it won't take you down.
Right.
It might take you down for a short period, but then you bounce back and say, okay, I have to get past that.
That's it for the ones you have written here.
Okay? So now, for any of those situations or any of those emotional states that we just talked about, if someone chooses to stay there for the majority of the day, each day, then that's their baseline.
Okay.
Now, we're only dealing for the most part with the negative ones, right? And there are others. You know, a pessimist, someone that never sees the good in anything,
Right.
you know? And there are others, but so we're keeping the list short, just as an example. The question now becomes, if your baseline is one of those, then how are you pretty much, what kind of frequency are you generating for yourself?
Oh, that's a very good question. I would think for most of the, what we would call negative emotions, it would be a lower frequency that would allow you to be open and susceptible to attachments or possessions or anything else that can be floating out there.
The negative things that can attach to you.
Right.
So you see that depending on your baseline, you'll feel what? What things do you correlate with attachments and possessions?
For me personally, is sadness, anger, sleepiness, and frustration, all kinds of negative emotions.
Do they sound familiar?
They do. They sound like a lot of people's baseline that we talked about.
So now, so folks always wonder, well, how do I get attachments? How do I get possessions?
Because of the emotions that you choose to put out there that either keep you elevated or lower you, your
Not just
frequency.
you can put them off for a short time. We're talking about the one.
But it's the one that's your baseline, the one that you put out most of the time.
Most of the time, exactly.
Right.
Now, nobody can force you to do that. You're the one that chooses to do that. Now, for example, you might choose, when I say you, I mean all
You
of
in
us,
general.
right? Exactly. You might say, well, I can't help it. Well, the moment
A
you
lot of
say
people
that,
say that.
the moment you say that, then of course that's what's going to happen. That's the power of words.
They say,
So-
that's just who I am.
Then that's what you become, because that's what you keep proclaiming. The more you say it, the more it materializes. So if you want to change your baseline, then change your language. But I'm not saying to start speaking Spanish or Chinese, right? I'm talking about
Your self-talk.
exactly. That's what it is, the self-talk. We're so used to using things like, I can't help it, it's impossible,
Yep.
you know, that's just the way I am, you know, just accept me for the way I am. Well, if we want to help you, we don't want to accept you with the type of baseline like the ones we just talked about, because we know what they do. They attract the negative things that will keep you down. All of a sudden you have a headache, right? You feel so exhausted that you want to go sleep. Next thing you know, your skin looks funny. We've had individuals that have said, you know, they have all of a sudden cuts appear on their bodies,
Right.
or a rash shows up somewhere, you know, or they start sneezing,
Or all of a sudden they've got bug bites on their arm. Like, where did those come from?
right? All because the person has chosen a baseline that's non-beneficial to them. We suggest that you sit down and review what you do on a daily basis as far as your emotions. How do you feel on a daily basis? The main thing is you shouldn't be looking at well, this is happening because of this person. Someone did this to me, so that's why I'm feeling this way. Because I've always said that, the Ascended Masters teach us this, nobody can dictate how you feel.
That's right.
All right? You shouldn't allow anybody to dictate how your day goes. You decide what your day will be like. And if you say, well, I'm feeling this way because this person treated me this way, or they told me this, they called me stupid, or they insulted me, or they called me fat, or whatever it is, you're the one choosing
To accept it.
to accept it, exactly.
But you can change it. I used to, confession time.
I thought you didn't do confession.
I'm talking to my audience now. I admit, in my teen years and early 20s, I used to say a lot of curse/bad words. and because of the business I was in, I would say a lot of them in my head. And I when I started on my spiritual journey, I realized from Mr. O that I had to change my thinking.
Mr. O is my best friend who passed away years ago.
Right.
Just so you know.
Sorry, in case you haven't heard about him in other videos.
Right. My wife and him were very good friends. I didn't deal with her. She didn't deal with me. She was very good friends with
Mr.
my
O.
best friend, Mr. O.
But he started talking to me about the power of words, and I should look up the power of words. And so I did, and I realized that I had to change the way I was thinking, the way I would handle the anger and aggression and anything else that would come to me. So, for example, if I all of a sudden wanted to say a curse word, like, oh, blank, 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 I'd say, oh, God bless America. And so by doing that, I started to slowly change, or I'd say if it was directed toward a person, I'd say, oh, God bless Joe, instead of coming up with that, you blankety blank blank, that would normally go through my head. So it's something that I had to really work on. And then the next thing that I worked on was also helping other people, because I didn't want to take on their energy. And I had a great example that just happened this morning when I was at the store. I was at the deli counter, and the lady who was helping me was talking to her coworker about how she missed not having her at the job yesterday. And when the coworker left, I said, that's really nice of you to have such a great relationship with your coworker. And the lady looked at me, she said, yeah, well, I have to be here today, and I should be off today, but nobody showed up yesterday. I said, well, you know what? Thank God you have a job. You know how many people don't have jobs right now? And immediately, the energy just changed. She literally stopped what she was doing, and she looked at me. She said, you're right. I am grateful, because if I didn't have this job, I wouldn't have a house. I wouldn't be able to feed my family. My husband is out of work. And that just changed everything. So you have the power to change everything about yourself. You just have to decide to do it and start acting on it. Did that
Well
make
said,
sense?
honey. That's why you're my wife.
Okay, well, I think this is something that I could use for myself still. Baseline. Maybe you know of someone else that can help. Please remember to share the video, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.